Welcome to a practical introduction to cloud security course provided to you by LufSec. Hello, my name is Luciano Verratti. I am the founder and CEO at LufSec Cybersecurity. We are specialized in cybersecurity services, like training and consulting services. Check out our website for more information. Companies continue to rapidly migrate workloads from data centers to the cloud, utilizing new technologies such as serverless, containers, and machine learning to benefit from increased efficiency, better scalability, and faster deployments from cloud computing. Cloud security concerns remain as the adoption of public cloud computing continues to surge, especially in the wake of the 2020 COVID crisis and the resulting accelerated shift to remote work environments. This course will provide you a practical introduction to cloud security, going over some real examples of cloud security breaches and what could have been the approach and security best practices to avoid those breaches. Then we review some of the most important topics like compliance, security tests, and what are the most common used security frameworks designed for cloud platforms. Cloud security is one of the hottest topic for a security professional nowadays. I really hope you can find this interesting and is also very excited, as I am, to get started.
Cloud services has been seeing great adoption over the past 10 years. I would say that as with any platform, as soon as it starts to achieve significant prevalence and footprint, security problems usually starts coming up. For cloud services, some of the security issues started in 2017. So what happened in 2017 was that some attackers used a set of scanners to scan pretty much the Amazon Web Services, AWS IP space. And they found that there were tens of thousands of unprotected MongoDB databases. MongoDB is a semi-structured NoSQL type of database that developers has been adopting over the past several years given the growth of non-relational data. And so starting in the late 2016, early 17, there were over 10,000 attacks that was recorded. Because the fact that a lot of MongoDB databases were being deployed with insecure configurations, with insecure default configurations, out of the box that will get installed that would allow for communication to the MongoDB database on the port 27017, which is the default port for the database, and would allow an unauthenticated connection. While that may be when someone is experimenting or developing a new application, one can imagine that somebody can do something like that. But it's really important to put appropriate authentication of controls. And so, what happened is there were a whole bunch of attackers, and what they did is they took control of the databases. They were often accepting unauthenticated communication. They were running with full admin rights, and so what the attackers did, they cut off access to those databases and said, you must pay me a ransom in a form of Bitcoin if you want to get access to your database back. So here on this slide, you can see an example of some of those attacks. There were more than 17 ransoms paid, but that's kind of a lower. Bottom line, because there was a whole bunch of people deploying Mongo databases on AWS with insecure default configurations, the steps to mitigate this sort of things are pretty simple. So let me mention, though, that the ransomware attacks that took place at this time period, one of the things I get interested for those who are familiar with ransomware attacks. So if you're familiar with a malware that has been used to conduct ransomware attacks, say against desktops, PCs, or other types of servers, very often what the attacker will do when they deploy the ransomware, they will encrypt the data and basically ask for a ransom, for the decryption key, so that only when ransom is paid, the data will be decrypted. Now, in this particular case, because full admin rights were accessible on the database, the attackers didn't need to encrypt all the data on the database. They just needed to cut off access and give the access back once the ransom is paid. So in any case, to mitigate these types of attack, there are 3 simple steps you can take. Number 1, use secure defaults instead of insecure defaults. And after these incidents, both Amazon as well as MongoDB just started making a whole bunch of information available to folks so that they could configure their databases in a more secure way out of the box. One example of using secure defaults is to require that connections be authenticated, require that the person trying to connect to the database present some identity credentials and actually make sure you know who it is, as opposed to letting anyone start scanning your IP space, the internet in Amazon to connect in. Some databases might come out of the box accessible via admin users and root passwords. There is no reason that users will need that level of privilege in order to regularly use a database. So you could not allow full admin rights and configure certain database rules based on what the person needs to do. And by the way, this concept of limiting privileges down to what people need to do their jobs, this is actually a very basic security concern, not only for databases, but as a whole concept for access management for pretty much everything. And the third key mitigation is that giving all the important data that might be in the database, whether it's in the cloud or otherwise, it is important to make sure it's regularly backup there. You back up all the data. For any kind of ransomware or attack, whether it's a cloud-based ransomware attack or it's a ransomware attack against laptops and PCs, effectively, if you have good backups, and say you could back up once an hour or once a day or something like this, if an attacker comes in and takes control of your database and you don't want to pay the ransom, if you have a backup, you can just restore it from the backup. And sure, you lose perhaps some recent transactions, but your application won't be completely unavailable and you won't be completely at the hands of the attacker if you have the backups. And since then, MongoDB has published more information about how to do good backups. MongoDB has tools like MongoDB Cloud Manager and the MongoDB Ops Manager, and they often teach us on how to back up those data so every transaction can be backed up easily. So this is the information from the MongoDB ransomware attacks.